Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy, our morning update for November 21st, 2022. And I'm your host, Joe Firestone. We'll be looking at a number of pieces of news today. I'm going to start off with the first one, which deals with problems with SNAP. This one is from Wealth Insider. It's about the Farm Bill and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. It's called The Human Cost. With the outcome of midterm elections unclear, food aid programs for low income Americans hang in the balance. I'm going to expand the size of the type here because this website decided to be easy on the eyes, and its type is very light and very small. Hopefully you'll be able to see it now at this point. Oh, by the way, before I really get going, let me share this on Facebook. Oh, there's Greg Mallard, who says, "Good morning, Joe." Thank you, Greg, for coming, and thank you for sharing. So, let me get back to the news here. And the midterm election results will have far reaching effects, including on low income Americans. But it's a particular piece of annual spending legislation that may determine food security during a time households already feel the pinch. The scope of the reauthorization and how much money will be appropriated for the Farm Bill as it's commonly known in 2023 may depend on the results of the midterm elections, said Elaine Waxman, senior fellow of the Urban Institute's Income Benefits Policy Center, a left-leaning think tank. The Farm Bill essentially decides how the government will spend money on food, from agricultural production and international trade to food security and aid for low-income families. Every 5 years, the House and Senate revisit the budget makeup and requirements of the bill and eventually reauthorize the bill. Each year in between, new appropriations must be approved. The current version of the Farm Bill, the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, expires in September of 2023. The largest budget in the Farm Bill is allocated to nutrition programs, in particular the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. Formerly known as the Food Stamp Program, SNAP aims to help lower income households to afford to eat. But the robustness of the reworked bill, which has expanded regularly, especially since the 1970s, is hard to determine. The Republicans appear to have gained ground in their push to regain control of the House. That's true, they have control of the House. As of Saturday, the Democrats are one seat away from control in the Senate. Divided Congress would result in more wrangling and compromise over how funds in the Farm Bill are allocated, analysts say. Democrats are one seat away from control. All right. Quote, SNAP helps more than 41 million people, roughly the equivalent to the population of New York State, Georgia, and Michigan combined, put food on their table every month, said Alice Reznikova, interdisciplinary scientist at the Union of Concerned Scientists, a nonprofit organization based in Cambridge, Mass. SNAP supports millions of Americans, often adult caretakers with children or seniors, and plays an important role in both urban and rural communities, she wrote in a blog post this week. In fiscal year 2023, which started in October, a person with an income at or below 130% of the poverty line, that is $1,920 a month for a family of three, is eligible to receive $281 in SNAP benefits every month on average, up from $250 previously. During the pandemic, Congress increased the SNAP benefits and paused the work requirements for able-bodied people. The program used to require most able-bodied people to work at least 20 hours a week, or else participants would only be able to get 3 months aid over a total of 36 months. Now that the unemployment rate has fallen from the peak of the pandemic, it hovers at 3.7% in October, down from a recent high of 14.7% in April 2020. Talk among lawmakers about ditching these emergency measures has been increasing, especially from some Republicans. They've called for states to administer their own SNAP programs based on the unemployment and poverty rates, in addition to the length of time that beneficiaries have received such aid. The Republican Study Committee outlined its vision for the Farm Bill in a recent report. The SNAP law is supposed to limit benefits for able-bodied adults without children who are unwilling to work, search for work, or enroll in job training for 3 months in any 3-year period, according to the report. Further, for many years, conservatives have pushed for SNAP to be converted into a discretionary block grant to the states based on rates of unemployment, poverty, and the length of time that beneficiaries receive aid. It added, under this model, states would have flexibility to administer their own programs, subject to several common sense requirements to ensure program effectiveness and viability. The Democratic opponents said SNAP eligibility must take into account the real-life challenges of unemployed and or underemployed workers. Those subject to this rule have extremely low income and often face barriers to work, said Ty Jones-Cox, Vice President of Food Assistance Policy at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, CBPP, the progressive think tank in Washington, D.C., focusing on the impact of federal and state government budget policies. Those barriers include criminal justice history, racial discrimination, and or health impairments. Unemployed and underemployed Americans also tend to have less education, she added. James Cox was speaking before the House Agricultural Subcommittee on Nutrition Oversight and Department of Operations in June. The push to cut the SNAP budget is long in the tooth. In 2014-2018, House Republicans proposed large cuts for both years' versions. Neither made it to the final version. The Republicans had a House majority in 2014, while Democrats held the majority of the House in 2018. Whether Republicans take control of both the House and the Senate, or the midterm leaves the country a divided Congress, which it did, of course, the Republicans will most likely seek to shrink the size of supplemental nutrition programs, which include the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, that is the WIC program, and SNAP, analysts say. Democrats managed to hold on to both the Senate and the House. The Biden administration will have more leverage within the Farm Bill to continue its focus on reducing hunger, underpinning nutritional programs, and supporting climate change mitigation and adaptation help, as well as conservation programs for farmers and ranchers. Those efforts are likely to expand opportunities for small producers, the report says. Cuts in the SNAP budget, on the other hand, could impact the millions of Americans. For fiscal year 2022, more than 41 million people, or nearly 22 million households, received food stamps totaling close to $96 billion, according to the latest data from the Department of Agriculture. So you get the picture. There's a threat from the Republicans to food security because they want to cut SNAP. That is the essence of the problem that's called out by this article. He points out food inflation has no quick fixes. Annual inflation stood at 7.7% in October, down from 8.2% in September. The rise in food prices was higher at 10.9%. Everything is getting more expensive, from the cost of containers and labor to livestock feed. And Russia's war in Ukraine sent energy prices, NGOO, minus 4.63%, soaring, and essential agricultural supplies were cut off by Western government sanctions in response to the war, causing more inflation, of course. Cost of groceries has increased by 13% over the past 12 months, meaning that a $100 supermarket trip in September 2021 cost $113 in September. And Reznikova pointed out, while $13 may not seem like all that much, it can have a large impact in a country where 13.5 million households struggled last year to put food on the table, unquote. SNAP does not respond to fast-paced inflation like what we've seen this year, she added. So the Farm Bill is coming up for reorganization in 2023. And the Republicans, of course, want to cut as much as possible to make life as difficult as possible for those Americans who are dependent on SNAP benefits and other agricultural supports. Putting food on the table remains a priority. If it was done properly, there would be an understanding that there might be a cost, but would be an acceptable cost. Sometime a solution, as far as one exists, remains clear. The Farm Bill is our best chance to address the interlinked causes of food and nutrition security, said Dr. Reznikova. But reimagined, it can increase access to nutritious foods by increasing investments in nutrition and anti-hunger programs, while also addressing the root causes of food and nutrition insecurity by promoting racial justice for farmers and farm workers and fair competition in the food industry. This is another area where if we had $100 trillion in the Treasury General account, then the negotiations with the Republicans would be greatly helped, because they could not cry poverty while trying to cut the programs for food assistance, in particular SNAP. That's as easy to see, as plain as the nose on your face. Without some proof that the federal government has the capability to spend for everything we need, that there is no reason for austerity, what the Republicans will do politically is to cry poor mouth on this one and point out that, as cruel as it is, we can't afford to provide food for those who need it. You're going to hear those arguments. And you're going to see a lot of the Republicans supporting cutting SNAP. And one way to stop this, as it's also a way to stop the cuts the Republicans want to make in Social Security, okay, and in Medicare. The way to defend against this, the best way to defend against it, is just to mint that $100 trillion coin so the federal government and these deficit terrorists and debt terrorists cannot cry poverty. That is very, very important. And it's something we're going to mention more and more as the next sessions of Congress wear on, because you know the Republicans are going to play that game. We have to make it clear that they want to play a false game. So, this next one is kind of personal for me, and I will explain why. As I go through it. This is an article about the price of a critical drug for those who have prostate cancer. Now, I have prostate cancer. It was diagnosed in 2012. So I have had it diagnosed for more than 10 years now. I've managed to handle it in differing ways as the years have gone by. I was diagnosed with Gleason 8, which is called aggressive prostate cancer, in 2012. I remember my doctor talking to me at that time when I asked him, well, how long do I have? Well, he said, this is aggressive prostate cancer. I won't be too surprised if you're still alive in 5 years. But I'd be really surprised, okay, if you were alive in 10. Well, P.S., I'm alive. My PSA, which is the measure, the test that people used to judge how successful the prostate cancer is, okay, in moving along. Okay, it was roughly, I think, 5.62. Okay, it was under the normal PSA for my age. In other words, the Kaiser Permanente standard, I mentioned Kaiser Permanente because that is my health insurer at this point, and also my provider for health services, because that's what they mainly do. The insurance is a secondary sidelight for them, or it was a secondary sidelight. They talk about something like 6.5, that if your PSA is over 6.5, it's a problem. I'm somewhere around 5.3 right now. Okay. But I've been lower, but it's something I worry about all the time. I worry about the prostate cancer getting out of control. I said I've used a number of techniques to try to take care of it. First of all, I manage my diet very carefully. I have no red meat. Generally, we are vegetarian except for a couple of nights per week when we have some fish or some chicken. We avoid certain foods. Uh, that kind of treatment, complete with a low-level drug called let's see, finasteride, was the way I treated this from 2012 through the beginning of 2016. Then the PSA started rising higher, and it looked like it was moving out of control. So at Kaiser, my doctors prescribed a drug known, okay, as bicalutamide. I forget what the trade name is for it. But anyway, it's one of a series of drugs that shuts down the spread of the prostate cancer. I'm not going to go into the technical details of these. You usually can use this drug, this pharmaceutical, for maybe 3 to 3.5 years. Okay, and then it basically turns against you. It actually feeds the prostate cancer after a time. The bicalutamide was very successful for me for 3.5 years. And it was time to step up to another drug. And the Kaiser people prescribed something known as abiraterone. The trade name for that is Zydeco. So I was put on to Zydeco roughly a year and a half ago. Surprisingly, the Zydeco was more effective than we expected. It's been effective for me now for a year and a half. I don't know when it will cease to be effective, but I do know at some time it's going to cease to be effective. My other measures to take care of this, for example, what I do is I use a program called the Budwig Diet, the Budwig Protocol. That's definitely helped me to overcome the side effects of these drugs I take. And I think it also contributes as well to lowering the PSA. Much heavier claims for it are made by the partisans of the Budwig diet. Let's just say I think it helps. So I've been pretty religious about that since actually about 2016. I started taking it a couple of weeks before I started to take um, the bicalutamide. Now I have to say that I've been very stubborn. I haven't wanted to take any drugs that are going to interfere with my sexual functioning. Uh, that is not something that I ever wanted to do. So, kind of a standard hormonal drug to treat the kind of prostate cancer that I have is the Lupron Depot drug. I never wanted to get into that. I absolutely said no. The cost of that drug is not very high. It's affordable probably for almost everyone. But of course, when you're on it, It's said, I don't know this for a fact, that it cuts your sexual drive completely. I didn't want that to happen to me. It also has certain side effects. It makes you irritable, makes you nervous, changes your personality in various ways. I don't want to change my personality either. So, what I did, as I told you, is to shift to bicalutamide, and I hope that over time, more advanced versions of that type of drug would be available to me, and I could see stretching before me maybe 15 years. Okay, this is in 2016 I'm talking about. Another 15 years where these pharmaceuticals were going to be effective. Once the effectiveness of the Zydeco ends, okay, I was looking at two other drugs that had been under development since 2012. One of these drugs, okay, was enzalutamide. The brand name of enzalutamide, okay, is Xtandi. The following article just appeared in Common Dreams. Patients push Biden HHS to act as pharma firm charges $190,000 per year for life-saving prostate cancer drug. And to put this in context, bicalutamide was also a life-saving cancer drug, but that's been out for a longer time, so it's gotten very affordable. The Xtandi actually first became available in 2012. Hi, honey. Hi. And so that's been out for some time too. It's coming up for patent renewal pretty soon. The price of that drug should be falling. Okay, let's go through the article and kind of check out what's been happening. This is Brett Wilkins, November 18, 2022. Cancer does not wait, nor should cancer patients have to wait for years for their government to act. That's the message patient advocates reiterated in a Friday letter asking the Biden administration to help them secure a life-saving prostate cancer drug that costs nearly $190,000 per year, despite its development being taxpayer funded. Last year, prostate cancer patient Eric Sawyer petitioned HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra to grant margin rights under which the government can grant patent licenses to companies other than the manufacturer of a drug for enzalutamide, which is sold under the brand name Xtandi. A 1-year supply of enzalutamide or Xtandi costs $189,800 in the United States, or up to 5 times more than its price in other countries. More than 250,000 new cases of prostate cancer will have been diagnosed in the United States. More than 33,000 men will have died from the disease during these 12 months. And during this period, Medicare will have spent more than an estimated $2 billion to purchase Xtandi from the Japanese drug maker Astellas. unquote, states the letter, which is signed by Robert Sachs, a prostate cancer patient, an activist, and advocate, by Claire Love. Meanwhile, the letter continues, quote, HHS has not taken any action on our petition, despite assurances, unquote, from the National Institutes of Health that the requests would be reviewed within a month. Public Citizen tweets, this is insane. Astellas is charging $189,000 for its cancer drug, Xtandi. With respect, as we know, it's charging $189,800, which is more closer to $190,000 than it is to $180,000. U.S. taxpayers help fund the drug, but we're paying up to 6 times more than other countries. Farmers' greed is sickening. Of course, HHS has the power to end price gouging of Xtandi. We called for at HHS Gov to take action last year. We're still waiting. Big Pharma will continue ripping off cancer patients if they don't take action now. However, 10 months later, the NIH has apparently not even decided whether to grant the evidentiary hearing petitioners sought based upon prima facie evidence showing that Astellas has discriminated against American prostate cancer patients and U.S. taxpayers. Discovered by scientists Charles Sawyer and Michael Young at the University of California, Los Angeles, with grants from the NIH and the U.S. Department of Defense, enzalutamide was approved in 2012 by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for the treatment of late-stage prostate cancer. 2 companies, Japan-based Astellas and Medivation Incorporated, a San Francisco biotech firm, developed Xtandi. When Pfizer paid $14 billion to acquire Medivation in 2016, the pharma giant's then CEO Ian Read said the value of Xtandi and its future growth potential was the principal driver, unquote, of the deal. Astellas, which controls the price of Xtandi and has raised its cost by nearly 90% since 2014. Can you imagine that? It was $19,000 a year in 2014. Now they want $190,000 for it. What is the rationale for raising the cost by nearly 90% except that they want more profit? It obviously was highly profitable at $19,000 a year, which is beyond the means of very many people already. So the defense of the company was, it's priced in line with other oral therapies for advanced prostate cancer available in the U.S. today and is widely available for patients across the health insurance marketplace. I have no idea what that means. I only know that at $190,000, it is out of the reach of most people. They cannot get this life-saving medication. So when they come off of Zydeco, they're stuck. Something exists to save their lives, but it's beyond their financial reach. You see something like that, and what you immediately want to do, the first reaction is, pass Medicare for all, God damn it, and let the government deal with the drug the companies and make the drug free to people. Stop this nonsense with the private companies, with their controlling prices, and with their price gouging. I mean, obviously, Astellas has been price gouging since 2014. Now, I want to add something to this. Beyond the enzalutamide, there's another drug known, as darolutamide, and that's controlled by Bayer. I have no idea what the cost is if you want to go to darolutamide. I do know that there's a risk factor in the use, okay, of enzalutamide that doesn't exist for darolutamide. For enzalutamide, there is a potential side effect that it has a greater tendency to cause seizures in patients, okay, as a side effect. So enzalutamide is more dangerous than darolutamide according to the research that's been done. From my point of view, the government of the United States should not even be allowing the sale of enzalutamide. Instead, people should be shifted over to darolutamide as quickly as possible, and of course, the cost of that should also be controlled by the government. We have to end these corporate profits being prioritized over what people can afford to pay. We have to end that. We have to end it tomorrow. We have to end it next week. We have to end it as soon as practically possible. When companies vote against, when they vote against Medicare for all, when they vote against controlling the prices that the pharmaceutical companies are charging, people in Congress are voting to kill people. They're voting to kill their constituents. They're voting to kill us. There are a number of litmus tests that we should apply to candidates for Congress. As you know, I'm a great partisan of a litmus test. If they take any big money, that should be viewed as failing a litmus test that's critical for congressional candidates, and it should be an automatic reason for voting against people. If people fail to control the prices, if Congress fails to control the prices that pharmaceutical companies can charge, that should be a reason for voting against a congressperson too. Now, of course, the whole Republican Party is guilty of this, and many people in the Democratic Party in Congress are guilty of this too. Clearly, they should be voted out of Congress because they are voting to kill some of their constituents who won't be able to afford these life-saving drugs. But to get back to enzalutamide, since it's more dangerous than darolutamide, in my view, that drug should be taken off the market. Only darolutamide should be allowed, and its price should be controlled. In a Common Dreams opinion piece, oh wait a minute, I missed the point here. Under the Bayh-Dole Act of 1980, federal agencies can exercise march-in rights if certain conditions are met, including if a drug's patent holder fails to make the benefits of the product available to the public on reasonable terms. So where is HHS not exercising march-in rights? How much money have the pharmaceutical companies and lobbies given to the Democratic Party, and perhaps even to Xavier Becerra, but certainly to Biden? How much money have they given to persuade our decision makers, our office holders, not to exercise marching rights, which are in the law. In a Common Dreams opinion piece published earlier this year, healthcare access advocates Ambika Verma, Tiffany Casey, and Ernie Powell wrote that charging American cancer patients up to 5 times more for a medication whose invention was 100% paid for by the American people and researched at a public American university, in this case UCLA, is not reasonable. Not only is it not reasonable, but that should never have been allowed. The drug companies should have been contracted to develop but such a drug, if that was necessary, and the contract price should have been their sole compensation. After that, in my view, the manufacturing should have been done by a government lab and the drug made available to the public for free. I don't give a damn if people say that's socialism. I don't give a damn what label you put on it. It has to be people over profits in cases like this. This should not be controlled by the private sector. It should be controlled by the government. These drugs should be available for free to everyone. I even reject the idea, the standard we have suggested is that the price should be no higher than the median price charged in other large high income countries. That's too generous. This drug was developed here, researched at a public American university. The government should have bought the manufacturing rights to the drug, and it should be controlling the price. HHS failure to grant a hearing, much less even consider the extended petition, flies in the face of the administration's laudable efforts to lower excessive drug prices and does a disservice to cancer patients like ourselves and other American taxpayers who must bear the cost of the HHS failure. That is such an understatement, does a disservice to cancer patients. It's condemning cancer patients to an earlier death than is necessary. By the way, the brand name for darolutamide is Nubequa. HHS can clearly insist on limiting the U.S. price of Xtandi to the median price for other large high-income countries. But again, this is more generous than necessary. There has to be some advantage for the nation that developed a particular drug with its funds, with its public funds. We should get the lowest price for this drug. In fact, we shouldn't, it's not even a question of getting the lowest price. We, the government, should have control over the price in this case because it was developed with our funding. The signers commended the administration for efforts to reduce drug prices, including with the Inflation Reduction Act. They're just trying to, they're commending Joe Biden because he did a little bit, because it's diplomatic to praise him in this letter. It's the usual cant and BS that goes on in politics. The Inflation Reduction Act did almost nothing for this. The march-in rights should have been exercised. The cost of the drug should have been taken away from Astellas. Of course, that would have probably introduced some difficulty also, because we probably have a free trade agreement with Japan. I'm not sure this is true, but it could be checked easily. We probably have a free trade agreement with the Japanese where there's an investor-state dispute settlement clause. So if the government were to march in, it would probably face a lawsuit from Japan in these international tribunals for potential profits lost because the U.S. marched in. That treaty should be declared immediately unconstitutional by the courts. The United States should march in and determine the price of these drugs. Quote, after waiting a full year for HHS to even consider our petition, we respectfully ask you, as Secretary of HHS and one who has in the past advocated the use of march-in rights, before he was working for Biden, to act on our petition without any further delay, the letter pleads, or exercise HHS royalty rights in the relevant patents, providing even more immediate relief. So the government has royalty rights over this drug, and it's not even exercising them. It's not even exercising them. The least it can do is to exercise them and use the royalty to underwrite the cost to patients. I mean, this is all garbage. It's just absolutely intolerable. We have to stop the donors from controlling our politicians. And the only way we can do that is to act collectively ourselves to vote against all the politicians who are taking the big money. By the way, here is a very, I'm going to cover this one very briefly. The AFL-CIO, let me be entirely accurate about this. The Austin AFL-CIO Council, Austin, Texas, becomes the latest to urge Biden to end the Medicare privatization scheme. The Labor Council of the Austin, Texas AFL-CIO has passed a resolution urging the Biden administration to terminate a Medicare privatization scheme that is quietly moving ahead despite vocal opposition from doctors, seniors, and progressive lawmakers. The pilot program, which inserts private middlemen between patients and healthcare, between the patients and the providers, was unveiled with little notice during the final months of the Trump administration, despite internal concerns about its legality. The experiment has since been largely upheld by the Biden administration, which announced mostly cosmetic changes earlier this year, winning applause from the industry group that lobbied against complete elimination of the program. Industry groups, probably former donors to Joe Biden. maybe even current donors to Joe Biden. The program is now known as ACO REACH. The pilot involves shifting traditional Medicare recipients onto privately run insurance plans without their knowledge or consent in the name of cutting costs and improving quality. Of course, these programs do not cut costs, and it's doubtful they improve quality. Where is the effectiveness evaluation for this program? Why isn't there an effectiveness evaluation? Why doesn't it already have any results? And if it fails to cut costs and improve quality, why isn't it simply ended? It's now in a trial period. It's a pilot. What are the criteria of evaluation in the pilot that it cut costs and improves quality? The resolution unanimously adopted by the Austin AFL-CIO Labor Council raises alarm over that aspect of the pilot, noting that ACO REACH allows doctors and their offices to convert a patient's traditional Medicare choice into ACO REACH coverage without first informing their patients about the change, nor getting their patients' written permission. That's absolutely true. So I'm glad the Labor Council of Austin finally got informed about this and said what they said. But this has been going on now for quite some time, and it's been very hard to get this news out. The CMS Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, which is overseeing ACO REACH, is currently headed by Elizabeth Fowler, the former Vice President of Public Policy and External Affairs at WellPoint, a health insurance firm that later became the Anthem Company. Anyway, Liz Fowler is extremely corrupt. She was instrumental in writing the original Affordable Care Act bill. She was one of those responsible for keeping the public option out of it. She had a close personal relationship with Senator Baucus, who was shepherding the bill through the Senate. I won't talk about the nature of the close relationship. When she left her job as a special assistant to Baucus, she immediately went into the health insurance industry. Then, as a lobbyist, she helped to write that particular bill. She was responsible for a good many of the shortcomings in that particular bill. Here she is again, years later, trying to cripple Medicare by privatizing it. Final quote from the article: the Austin AFL-CIO Labor Council resolution implores the Biden administration to immediately stop and dismantle the ACO REACH program and instead immediately protect and preserve traditional Medicare Plus, adding coverage for hearing, vision, and dental care. I completely agree with that. And I also think that all those on Medicare Advantage now should immediately be shifted back to traditional Medicare. ACO REACH is closely related to Medicare Advantage, but it's even worse. Much worse. We must immediately end Medicare privatization programs like ACO REACH, said Pramila Jayapal, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Quote, there's no excuse for allowing the same Medicare Advantage organizations to now administer care for traditional Medicare beneficiaries, unquote. So that was a pretty short one I wanted to introduce you to. Now, one more thing I want to go through here. And this is a piece about Hakeem Jeffries, the heir apparent to Speaker Pelosi as leader of the Democratic Party, the chosen, of Nancy Pelosi. Endorsed by Nancy Pelosi, endorsed by Jim Clyburn, endorsed by Steny Hoyer. This is an article by Robert Kuttner on November 9th, the House Democratic leadership race. Democrats really want their next leader to be compromised and corporate? A very good question. Final results are still coming in, but if current patterns hold, it appears Republicans could narrowly win control of the House by around 5 to 10 seats. Yeah, that's right on the money. It's going to be between 5 and 10 seats. In fact, I think it's going to be between 6 or 7 and 10 seats now. That is far from the red wave predicted by most pundits who got caught in their own echo chamber. More on that in a moment. If Democrats do lose the House, there's likely to be a contest for several of the leadership posts, most notably Minority Leader. Even before the vicious assault on her husband Paul, Speaker Nancy Pelosi is likely to step down if Republicans gain the House. I suspect that it's even more likely now that if she wants to stay, she would undoubtedly have no resistance to doing so. Of course, she's announced that she's going now, that she's no longer be House Leader. Steny Hoyer has also announced that. This article talks about how either Steny Hoyer or James Clyburn will run for leader. No, they're not going to run for leader. Steny Hoyer has said he's not running for leader. James Clyburn said he's not running for leader. He wants to run for assistant speaker, a post that's presently occupied by Catherine Clark. It's Catherine Clark who wants to run for whip. I'm sorry, James Clyburn who wants to run. No. Catherine Clark is running for whip now. James Clyburn is running for assistant speaker. Okay, the article says this will set off a scramble. The leading candidate is Hakeem Jeffries of New York 52. That is, he's 52 years old. Now the caucus chair, fifth ranking in the hierarchy. Well, really, he was kind of second in the hierarchy in terms of influence because he was the heir apparent to Nancy Pelosi. He would be the first black leader of either party in either chamber. Ordinarily, that would be a slam dunk for stupidity. But Jeffries is a corporate Democrat and a terrible opportunist. In 2021, he threw in with the most conservative Democrats in the caucus, notably Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, and created Deep Team Blue PAC with the express purpose of preventing progressive Democrats from winning primaries. I think the progressives ought to reply now by, as a unit, rejecting him as the minority leader. If they could assemble 90 votes in the CPC to do that, it would doom his chances. And that's exactly what we need. While the PAC's mission was intended to protect incumbents, the House Democratic Caucus is well to the left of Gottheimer, well to the left of Jeffries, too. Jeffries pretends to position himself as a progressive caucus member, but this episode helped show his true colors. It sure did. There's also the fact Jeffries is another prospective leader from Brooklyn, along with Senate Leader Chuck Schumer. I have to point out here that Bernie is from Brooklyn too. Doesn't mean everybody from Brooklyn is reprehensible, but Schumer and Jeffries are. That would give New York City the leadership of the Democrats in both chambers. And New York, more than any other state, disastrously underperformed in yesterday's election. As many as 6 or 7 Democratic seats in the Empire State could flip. In particular, the Brooklyn Democratic Party engaged in almost no effort to turn out voters. That is at least partially on Jeffries, a high-ranking official in the borough. Who could take on Jeffries? The obvious contender is Katherine Clark of Massachusetts, a close ally of Speaker Pelosi, and currently the assistant speaker, maybe you mentioned. Anyway, Katherine Clark, since this article was written, has declared for the whip spot. She, in other words, agreed not to take on Jeffries. They probably talked together. And she agreed she wasn't going to take on Jeffries. She was going to go for the whip spot. It's an open secret that Pelosi has been grooming Clark for a top leadership position. Okay, to that, I have to ask, what is wrong with Katherine Clark? If Pelosi's been grooming her, there must be something wrong with her from a progressive point of view. She does have a good voting record from a progressive point of view, but there's got to be something wrong with her if she's being groomed by Pelosi. Pelosi even created a post for Clark called Assistant Speaker, which makes Clark the 4th ranking person in the leadership, just ahead of Jeffries. No, I prefer Clark to Jeffries. I don't really want either of them, but I certainly prefer Clark to Jeffries. According to sources close to Pelosi, however, the assumption has been that Clark was being groomed to serve first as majority leader, succeeding Hoyer, and not for the top job. That, however, could change. It has changed. Again, she's going for whip, and she decided not to contest what Hakeem Jeffries would do. We need someone to contest him at this point. Okay, now Joe Neguse was running for caucus chair. The powers that be, Pelosi and others, set on this guy, Aguilar, Peter Aguilar from California, to serve as the caucus chair. And Joe Neguse, who wanted it as well, is out there running against him. Joe Neguse is a real progressive. If he would have run against Hakeem Jeffries, then at least there would be a progressive candidate who would be running against him. This article says, taking no chances, Jeffries met on September 1st with Jim Clyburn, the top-ranking African-American Democrat in the House, to seek the support of Clyburn and the Congressional Black Caucus. If Jeffries got that support, it would make it more awkward for Clark to take him on. According to Politico, Clyburn was friendly but made no formal commitments. If Clyburn does oblige, it would be another case of the South Carolinian playing the role of kingmaker. Yeah, don't forget, he was one of those behind the defeat of Nina Turner. In 2020 primaries, Clyburn's strong endorsement rescued a faltering Biden campaign and allowed Biden to win the South Carolina primaries, creating a bandwagon effect for the presidential nomination. That if the CBC does endorse Jeffries, it would be another unfortunate case of race trumping progressive principles. With Democrats having had a better night than expected by defying the conventional council to move to the center, It would be a travesty to elect a corporate centrist as leader, black or white. Another possible contender for leader is Adam Schiff. He's already said he's not going to do that. He's going to run for the Senate in California instead. Democrats had a better night than most pundits expected because turnout held up, because abortion did not fade as a galvanizing issue, because inflation did not crowd out other issues, and because Biden's low approval rating did not taint other Democrats. So New York deserves special mention. If Republicans do flip 6 or 7 New York seats, then New York all by itself could account for the loss of the House, which right now, there were 3 seats that were lost in New York, and right now that accounts for the loss of the House. That may change. There are still a few seats outstanding, so the loss of those 3 might not have produced enough Democratic votes to take over the House. But there were those 3 losses in New York. Meanwhile, the accidental governor, Kathy Hochul, barely won her own election, dragging down the whole ticket. Hochul, a feeble governor and a dismal candidate, has the job only because Cuomo needed an upstate woman. Put the wholly undistinguished Kathy Hochul on the ticket as his running mate in 2014. Since then, she became governor after Cuomo resigned in disgrace in 2021. So the loss of the House could be one more parting gift via a couple of bank shots from the reprehensible Cuomo, with no help from Democratic machine polls such as Hakeem Jeffries. We can't have Hakeem Jeffries leading the Democratic Party if we care about the Democratic Party winning, which I do, because even though they're bought, the Republican Party is so bad. So bad. They're planning to use a debt ceiling crisis to try to cut Social Security and Medicare. I recently talked about that, of course, and talked about what Biden should do to stop it. But that's the kind of thing they want to do. Earlier in this stream, I talked about how they want to cut SNAP. The whole party is full of reprehensible people. They choose reprehensible people to run, and they elect them in safe Republican districts. This is really terrible for the United States. The idea that we should elect someone as Pelosi's successor who will always play footsie with the Republicans. Why don't we just make it quick and end the Democratic Party altogether? Anyway, folks, let me take a quick look at your comments, because I think that's all for this update. Good morning, Greg Mallard. Kay says, hi, Joe. And Kay says, what the hell else can they do to us, the poor? Kay says, gotta go for now, Joe. Take care. Okay, Kay, you take care too. So there we are. Thank you for coming, if there's anybody still here. And I'll see you later. I have another stream coming on. I think the next stream is coming on at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. So check that out. I do have it already scheduled. So if you take a look at the YouTube page, you should see whether the time is 4:30 or 5 o'clock. Hey, Steve, how are you? I'm just about ending now. as I said, I'll be back at, I believe it's 5. But anyway, check it out, okay, on YouTube. I'll be here. I'll be talking about the crypto fraud. So, the stream at 5 o'clock is going to be about the crypto fraud. I've also got a stream coming up, okay, at 9 o'clock. I don't yet know what that stream is going to be about because it's dependent on news happening. But as soon as I know, it'll be scheduled. So please look for it. I'll see you later. Steve says, I'm working. See you later. Steve says, I didn't buy crypto. Okay, Steve, you were wise not to buy crypto. I haven't bought any crypto either.